But I want to hear Raizel's mixed feelings. Let's hear.
No, I think I've seen both. I've seen the idea that, I don't know. I don't want to speak specifically about our situation that I saw, but at the same time, I think that tough love doesn't work. I don't believe in it. I just don't. I mean, I know when I want to, like smack them and shut up and just be quiet.
Yeah.
Here's a device and be quiet. But I know at the same time that if I don't focus on the behavior that's in front of me, but rather about the need that's behind it, and I really tap into that, I don't know. I don't think that you have to earn your phone when you're 18 or 20. I think that's just, you're getting them to just do what they have to do so they know what they, at that time, at that moment. But at the same time, I think there has to be, and I saw that here in this home. There's still chores and there's still responsibilities and you still have obligations that you have to come to certain meetings. You have to do, there's still obligations.
Right.
But it's not like you are here and I'm here and so you have to earn, we're human beings.
Hello and welcome to the Brainstorm podcast. And now, your host, Sonny Perlman.
We are live. Rabbi Nechemia Schusterman. All right. We'll write a bio of you guys before, so but I'm really excited to have you guys here. Really excited.
And a little anxious.
Because I can explain that comment because I'm sitting here we're like pre-conversating and you guys are like a mile a minute, like super people. And I am like having a hard time regulating. I'm just, breathe, relax. Okay. And you guys are doing incredible amounts of stuff. Okay. Could we start with your podcast?
Sure.
I want to start with your podcast. Again, the way this works a little different than your podcast. It's not really an interview in the sense where if you have a question for me, knock yourself out like it's a conversation.
It's a schmooze.
What?
It's a schmooze.
It's a schmooze. A little bit more like a schmooze. But I find that your podcast. Okay, so I know you from before your podcast, but your podcast has been very interesting to me because you really have a tremendous amount of different topics and ideas and in the podcast, and I've been like looking at it as something that I can learn from because I've been pretty pigeonholed into one idea, and I'm really liking that you guys are really spreading out. So let me ask you, why do you decide to make a podcast?
Good question.
And you're on like half the podcast,
yeah,
so
well,
at least.
Because it's really a joint project that we started together. I'll
Right.
tell you what happened. I think I started this like at the beginning of COVID. So COVID was happening, and Zoom was going on, and it was easier to get people. And maybe it was before COVID.
You were finishing up your degree as well.
Right. I was finishing up studying on positive psychology. And
Wait, can I stop you for a second?
Sure.
Could you explain what positive psychology is?
Really?
Not to me, but
Positive
truth is to
psychology-
me.
okay.
I know very little about
Positive
it.
psychology is a scientific study of why or how people live a happy life. So like instead of studying prior to positive psychology was based more on the how do people suffer, like what kind of mental illnesses they have, the DSM and all that. And then they said, let's start studying why people thrive. Why are these people happy? Like doing studies, actually figuring out what's the difference between these groups of people, and so that we can learn from them and then apply that to our life.
Right.
So that's really what positive psychology started.
So it's like focusing on resilience? Like,
yes, yeah,
okay.
all of it. Like what
Wow.
makes people happier,
But I think maybe the most fundamental part of it is rather than focus on looking back, what are your traumas? It
Right.
says, okay, you're at baseline. How do we bring you above baseline so
Right.
that when you fall down, you end up actually at baseline average? So
Right.
it's lift the whole ocean higher, which
Right.
is a whole different way of looking at things.
It's funny because it's one of the things I get very excited about is that we hit a point in psychology where we talked about all the pathologies and all like how sick people are, and to the point where everybody's like, we get it. You have trauma, you suffer. How come there are a couple people that don't suffer?
Right. Exactly.
I love that. So
It
you're
began
saying
with,
that's the premise of
yeah.
it.
So it really, Viktor Frankl started it with logotherapy, and it kind of built up over that. So
Oh,
it really
okay, that
stems
makes a
from
lot of
that idea.
sense. Okay.
Post World War II, all these studies that were done, and it's very fascinating. And when you study it, you learn about all the studies that are out there. So you see the science behind it, And the idea is like, if you ask somebody how you're doing, they're like, I'm fine. You know, like the idea is we all want to just be okay. But actually the idea of positive psychology is like, how do we get people to better than fine, better than just okay, like actually doing well, thriving. And that's flourishing. And there's a lot about positive psychology, but I was studying to become a positive psychology practitioner. And I loved the information that I was learning. And I was like, I just want to get it out there. So I started first with these little clips. This was before Reels on Instagram. I would do these little short videos, but they took a lot of effort and, you know, trimming. And
we had none of this awesome technology.
We got great technology.
So I was the tripod.
Yeah.
And
we
had to do it again and again and again.
Yeah, it was a little tiring. And then one of my sister-in-laws, Nechemia's sister, who I'm really close with, she was like, Raizel, you should do a podcast. You should do a podcast. I'm like, what? Sounds so complicated. I am not techie at all.
Right.
Like I'm not. This overwhelms me just seeing all this. Technology
stuff.
Yeah. So I started.
Just to explain, there are 3 cameras
and
mics.
Mics and
there's wires all over the place.
Yeah,
there are wires.
It's very professional. We're gonna have to take a picture so I could post this because this is really, really cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's how it started, and I was like, okay, I'll try it, and I began. It was much easier than I thought. And I first had, I started with my father-in-law. He shared a little bit about his story before.
You just wrote the book.
Right.
You just mentioned this.
Yeah.
Pre-book.
We'll get to the book. We'll get to the book, but she interviewed him the first time, like a couple of years ago.
3 years ago, yeah.
And he actually says that was one of his breakthrough moments to actually be able to, he's from the generation where we don't talk about our feelings.
Right.
And that book is all filled with feelings. And we told him, until you put your feelings out, you ain't going to sell your book. Then she interviewed him again once the book was launched 2 years later. It was kind of cool to see everyone made major progress in that time.
Yeah, it was a breakthrough. But anyway, and it took off. Like I never expected it to be anything that it became. Like I was just enjoying it and like interviewing people that are interesting to me. You said before that like you like the fact that it covers lots of different topics. I literally don't follow any kind of script or ideas. I just whatever I'm interested in and what's.
Well, I think the general script is it's got to be in the general genre of mental health and raising a healthy family.
Right. But I do want to say one thing. Right. The part that I would say that it's our podcast is because Nechemia is the one who really encouraged me to go to actually get this certification for positive psychology practitioner. And then once I started with it, he's like, go with it. Just he kept pushing me and encouraging me to do it and helped me make it happen and got me tons of all those cool people that I interviewed.
Yeah.
He got them for me.
You're the producer.
He's the assertive guy that actually is not shy to go and call somebody and ask them, how do I get a hold of Rabbi Nechemia Raizel? How do I get a hold of this guy? And then he's like, I have a better guy. You're going to interview Yochanan Palter first. Now that
let me interject there just to take it back a step. So, we're married 21 years, right? 23. Oh my God, I just took off 2 years. Oh, I'm so dead.
I'm so glad I got that on video, folks.
All right. So we've been married. See, it's good.
A while.
We've been married a long time, and I always felt like she has a pretty, married couples know how to go at it sometimes, but the problem was like many good Jewish, marriage fights is like she was right. And then she had this incisive ability to kind of get right to the core. So I said, "You're good at this." I said, "You just need you need any degree so that people will actually, because that's what you need. You need some letter after your name so people can take you seriously." So she ended up going with that. And once she got the, the certification, which by the way, that's a side thing. She's not even talking about that. She has clients like out the door. Like,
oh really? You have a prior practice with that? Because I don't.
Yeah, so I'm doing
coaching.
So the podcast is one thing that I do. I do positive coaching, life coaching, and then I want to say the main thing that we do is we're shluchim. Like that's really our main. Like I would say we have a family first, then we are shluchim. Then I have. For me, I have my coaching, and then I have my podcast. That's how I would say the order of things. But that's a little bit about the podcast.
I'm exhausted. That's amazing.
Right. So this was going. You were doing like kind of family and friends.
Can I just make a joke? Someone once told me that you should give a blessing, and you're not Israeli, but the blessing should be you should have the confidence of a Chabad Israeli guy opening a pizza shop in Brooklyn. Like the confidence of that. You reminded me.
So confidence of a Chabad guy opening
Israeli Chabad guy opening a pizza shop in Brooklyn.
I love it.
I love it. Just absolute confidence. Like you're for sure gonna fail. Like 100%. Everybody will tell you, and there's absolutely nothing stop. And sometimes they don't fail.
But it's not. Right now you're focusing on the things that are working. We've tried 1,000 things that have failed, but that's I think that's the difference. You were talking about resilience.
So it's like the Chabad Israeli
You got to
guy.
keep trying, and things stick.
And that's his thing. So I'm more like, yeah, this is good. I don't have to have top speakers. And he's like, no, you gotta get this guy. I'm gonna get you with this guy. I'm gonna get you that guy. And I'll tell you, like that Yochanan Palter, that was like a side thing.
It was interesting because
You
I
should get him.
had
He's
heard
great,
Shimon
too.
Russell.
I didn't hear the Yochanan
You know
Palter
Shimon
one.
Russell, I'm sure.
Sure.
So I've heard Shimon Russell. I'm like, oh, that would be great. We got to get him on.
Did Shimon go on yours?
We got him, but to get to Shimon, there was a process. I said we have to get Shimon. So how would I get? So I asked Rabbi Schusterman. We'll get to him in a bit with the
Right.
other. But I said, how do I get a hold of Shimon Russell? Because they did some interview or something together. He says, well, Shimon Russell does the Fresh Start program out in Michigan,
Right.
and this what's his name again?
Yochanan
Polter runs the Fresh Start. So I call Yochanan Polter. It's all about being brave enough to navigate that. So I call Yochanan, and he's like, let's see if we can get Shimon Polter. He says, but I want to just share with you some other interesting things that we're involved in. Then he started talking about HSP, highly sensitive people.
Right.
He shared his. This is just. I'm just schmoozing with him. This was no podcast. And I said to him, this is so fascinating. And I said, would you let my wife interview you? So, and basically, so once we interviewed him, and his thing,
Yes.
maybe the most listens.
I think there's at this point almost 9,000 downloads on that.
Wow.
And I am stopped in the street continuously about specifically this topic because it resonated so much with people. They understood themselves, their spouses, and their children that this idea of HSP was something that they hadn't heard of. I hadn't heard of it, and it helped me be a different parent, different kind of teacher, different kind of coach. So yeah, it was really breakthrough.
So one thing led to the next. It's just you gotta take those plunges, and a lot of that success just built in. And once you have real name brand people, the HSP with the topic, Shimon Russell, both the topic and the name.
Wait, you haven't Shimon recently?
No,
It was a while
It was
ago.
more in the beginning.
Oh,
It
okay.
was like 2 years ago, I think, at this point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 2 years ago. Like
No, I
around this
missed
time,
it.
2 years ago.
I mean, I definitely listened to all the ones of my siblings.
Yeah, I just did one. But
Oh, you didn't get
I also
Kiwi?
had- I don't know
I
if you
feel
know-
like no, you did Kiwi.
Oh, of course I had Kiwi. I forgot about that. Yes.
Two.
He's amazing. Yes, I did. I had your sister. I had you.
That's right.
That's right. It was
Who's
a
next?
really
Shim. We
important
gotta
topic.
get Shim.
It was great. You got to get
There's a lot
Shim.
of siblings. I don't know all of them. I can't
You
imagine.
got it. Every one of us is therapists.
You guys are
My siblings
incredible.
won't even come on my podcast.
What?
Well, you had Shim and you had Akiva.
My sister Sarah is the dean of YU. She won't come on this podcast.
What?
She won't. Everybody in my family is super impressive.
I know.
They're the most fun
I
to
actually
talk
want
to.
to meet your mom. Is what I want to meet. She was
That's
probably really
gonna be fun.
By the
incredible.
way, that would be a really great.
Yeah.
She
great
lives in the
conversation.
old city.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, she's in the
No
old
worries, we just
city.
gotta fly to Israel. Get that.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
get that squared away.
You don't have to fly anywhere. You guys are
do it on
doing
Zoom
Zoom.
anyway.
Everything
Yeah.
is Zoom. You mentioned the Haggadah. I'm going to this Haggadah. You made a Haggadah. First of all, with Shay's Taub.
Yes.
Can I ask you about that? First of all, I didn't know until the Haggadah that Chabad does not do Nirza.
We do.
We do nirtza, but we don't have
What does that mean?
we don't have like a whole
What do you do in
special
Nirza?
prayer.
Shana Babi Yerushalayim.
We sing Lashana Babi.
That's not Nirza.
Shine, shine, shine. Yerushalayim.
Half the good
Hallelujah.
songs are in Nirza.
Well, no. Once the Seder's over, you can sit and sing all night. I can do Chad Gaja all you want, but
It's not part of Nusach Chabad.
but
Right, I did not know that.
But it's interesting because we were talking about it in the next expanded edition. We're going to do a lot more songs in the end, just because if you notice, we did a Nusach Ashkenaz, not Sfard, which is the Chabad flavor. Because
Right.
we wanted it to have wide reach. Okay, so let's use this as a
Okay.
springboard to step back. Okay,
Yeah.
why are we even here? Why do we even know who you are?
Yes.
Right, so because I kind of feel like we went to like the third inning and we didn't start at the beginning.
Well, I'm trying to let you guys take the lead on
I
that.
love it. You're,
Okay,
such,
so-
a, you're,
all right,
you're such
so-
a good interviewer. You really let us take the lead.
He's also being very respectful of all right. So the very short of it, not much of a secret. One of our children did land in the world of addiction. Baruch Hashem, that child is doing great, doing really great things. Along his journey, he ended up, along his journey, we ended up consulting with you well before he actually made it, because it was COVID. You were closed for a period of time. He ended up spending some time here at our village. And we were calling you like every 5 minutes. I think we had you on speed dial. Okay, what do we do now? What do we do? We were the worst, most codependent, illiterate parents in the world. And
I don't know know if I would say it
I don't know why
that
you
way.
knock it. Honestly,
I don't think so.
if I could get you guys as parents for everybody else, I'd be very excited.
Okay.
Oh, Sonny.
Yeah, you guys cared.
Well, obviously, you cared,
A lot of parents are not even calling me.
but it's interesting because you
You
get
cared, you were interested, you wanted to change yourselves, you wanted to like do better, and how could I do this better? Half the time, I either get ignoring me or yelling at me that I'm doing everything wrong. Those are my two general parenting.
So that's so sad to hear.
It is sad, but it.
Because reality is that when your child is going through anything, you have to look at yourself in the mirror.
I think the main thing is we were just incredibly ignorant.
Not everybody does that.
I don't know if I think that in Nechemia you mentioned that we were illiterate. I would say that
we had no knowledge
About
of
the recovery
of
world.
addiction and recovery.
we were kind of aware about mental health, and we did understand the concept of like growth. We were definitely growth mindset people, and we wanted to educate ourselves. I mean, that's really how we got into this whole.
Also,
Yeah.
a lot of this is
You got into the positive psychology before this whole
Yes,
thing?
yes,
You were ready to
absolutely.
go.
Yeah, early on in my life, I
but I would say this story
was part of it. I mean, the beginning of it.
throw gas on
Yes,
the fire for sure.
absolutely.
Well, I'll take you back to you, but I'm saying just not trying to flatter you. If there are a couple of parents like you that are like, let's get on this. First of all, I love it. It was always both of you. And we had this cool chat where you guys were both on, which we're still pretty active on, which is pretty cool. And you guys were really, very often you find one parent is like the one who's leading the charge and the other one kind of hiding in the background. And so I'll get that. Like I'll have this person's mother calling or this person's father calling. So first of all, and I don't know if this is advice for people, but I could tell you for me that you guys both being on the same page, you don't think like each other, but you were like ready to tackle this together.
I would say we complement
goal.
each other. Like,
Yeah.
We have strengths in different areas and we complement. I don't want to steal your story because I cannot stop hearing and love hearing how much you love your wife and so I've never met your wife, but I know that's the model marriage out there. But we too have been blessed that we support each other and we have strengths in different areas. So that's why it kind of works. Like
we also do have similarities. You know, some people say opposites attract, and but we actually we have similar personalities. We are different, obviously, but we do have similarities, and I think that we complement each other. And we decided right away, whenever any of our children were struggling or having a challenge, that we're not going to push it under the carpet. We're going to deal with it. We're going to do whatever we can, and we're going to educate ourselves. And so when this happened for us, we said the same thing. We're just going to figure out how we could together. And I think that's the most important thing for parents to understand, is that the best thing you could do for your children is to really come at it from a place of a cohesive together message for your child. I hear from so many parents, my husband's not on the same page as me, my spouse is not on the same page, and it's difficult. It can be done. You can still do a great job with your children, but it just makes it really much harder. So it's a blessing when you can do that with your spouse.
Right, but it's good that we're on camera because otherwise we would just both be talking at the same time. So out of respect for the cameras and the other people, we're giving each other space to actually talk.
We do cut each other off quite a bit.
But by the way, I don't agree with this opposites attract thing.
No?
I don't know. I don't see. Well, I don't see it working so well. I mean, I also have a lot of similarities to my wife, and it seems to work out. Opposites, they may attract, but it seems like they also
right.
But it's like fire and water, and they're killing each other.
It's like
at times.
Well,
maybe it's like batteries. The opposites attract,
Right.
but then as soon as they get married, one of them flips over, and they're like being pushed apart. I don't know.
I think you have to like really remember what you loved about your spouse and stop trying to change that part of them. Like what attracted you initially about this person was X, Y, or Z. And then you get married and all of a sudden you're like trying to make them like you. Do it like me. Do it this way. And then you're like, wait, actually, this is what I liked about this person.
Right.
Let them be who they are. Let's not try to control it so much. But that's effort and work. And
You're making marriage sound nice. You know what I'm
It
saying?
is
A lot
nice.
of people.
It is nice. It's a beautiful thing. It's just something that requires a ton of work and effort.
It does.
Right. I think that's anyone who's been blessed. Actually, anyone who's been blessed with a good marriage, or even those who've been challenged by a not good marriage, know that you got to keep working at it. It doesn't. It doesn't hum on its own.
Yeah.
It requires like it's like like your Tesla. It really requires a lot of maintenance.
Thank you. I didn't even have to bring it up myself.
You knew the Tesla was going to find its way into this conversation somehow.
How is it like a
I'm
Tesla?
going to bring you guys back to the conversation that you started with. You were in the middle of saying.
You're in the middle of saying something. I have a question.
Not ADD, by the way.
I have a question.
Your sister didn't.
I'm not ADD. My sister says I'm not ADD. You saw that podcast?
Yeah, that was nuts. The
I
camera
did, I
flying
heard
all
it.
over the place. That was
I
awesome.
loved it. He swallowed a fly.
I swallowed a fly.
I don't know if it was a kosher fly, but it was definitely.
But I so love that you didn't edit that out.
I made it into a short.
You made it into a reel. Actually.
That's right.
It was so funny.
Awesome. As you can see, we are real Sonny fans.
Okay,
And
this
I
is
do
good.
want-
You
I
really
do want to
know.
interject with that and see
Yeah.
that part. I mean, I know it's your podcast, but I don't know that you realize what a big part of our life that you are. Like, I remember where I first heard you speaking. You were on Coach Menachem, and
Right.
I was in the. It was a really tough time for us. We were in the midst of chaos in our life. I was sitting I was exercising, and I had tears running down my face as you were talking. And I was like, I sent that audio to my family, how to support somebody who's in recovery. I'm like, here's what family can do. And it was excellent. It was so great. And
But
I
I'm
remember.
going to cut you off for a
Wow.
second.
Go.
Talking about one thing that we both had really, really incredible from the beginning is strong support from our families.
Yes.
Right? I want to hear about
both
that.
my family and her family, as literate or illiterate as they were in the world of recovery, they all had our back fast and strong.
But I will say
and,
also,
and that was very significant
but
as
don't
well.
you think
Right.
that that's because we were open, honest, and
Yes.
clear?
Yeah.
And
There was no
communicated what
kicking
we
the thing
needed?
under the rug.
We
were not doing that.
We were like, this is what we're going through now. I need your help.
This is so interesting that you guys are saying this because one of the biggest complaints I hear from most parents is the feeling of being so incredibly alone in this process.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
so
true.
we got to break this part.
So let's break it down,
There absolutely was the aloneness, at least initially. Now, once you enter that world, you realize that you're so not alone. There's so many people. But I to that point, I would say maybe this has something to do with the fact that we live as Chabad Shluchim, both as Chabadniks and Chabad Shluchim out in the middle of a very secular environment. The taboo is not as great out in these environments as it is. And we're in a lot of ways more aligned with just regular America, where this is a crisis across the board, addiction and recovery. And as Chabadniks, we've seen it all. Like it's interesting. I made contact with a guy who 10 years ago who was in early recovery, and as a rabbi, he met with me and we're talking. And I didn't know the 12 steps. I didn't know a thing. I didn't know what I was talking about. But I was just loving on him because that's what I do.
Right.
I've since in the last couple of years, I was texting with him yesterday. I reached out to him and I said, I have a whole new understanding of everything. I want to meet and just kind of do it again, even though we know each other now. But I can suddenly understand the journey differently. Wow. So I guess my point is that we're to see people walk, in a very frum world, your kid got into drugs and alcohol, and the shidduch and all the classic things that frummies worry about.
Right.
I guess we weren't so concerned about that.
For some reason, I don't know. Maybe we should.
Maybe we're crazy. I don't know.
That is, but it's very different. I mean, it's very, very different. I was at this Kesher Nafshi thing,
We went to one.
You went to once?
We went to one, and by the way,
You were there. I think we came after you.
we came. You were there, but you left, I guess, Thursday. And we came a
Oh,
little
okay,
later.
okay. You missed probably the best speeches.
Probably.
But don't laugh. I went back and listened to it. It was good.
It was very good.
See, you're complimenting us on where we're at. It didn't happen immediately. There was some
Process, yeah.
some deep
But that's what I was
work
saying is that when we
to get us there. And Kesher Nafshi was a little part of that thing.
No, but I was saying I was at Kesher Nafshi, and at a certain point, somebody came over to me and said, I thought I was completely alone in this, and then 4 people on my block are here.
right.
It was like, these are people I talk to every day, and I just didn't know that they were going through this process.
It's like going to a meeting and then seeing people you know.
So I'm saying but you guys saying we had family support, did that happen right away? Or because it's so rare what I'm hearing.
I think that if you're open and honest and state what you need, I think a lot of people are so busy keeping everything a secret and like hush, hush, hush in our community, which
Yeah.
is part of our problem. I think the whole stigma.
Support doesn't mean they understood us.
Yeah.
No, that's not what I'm talking
Or
about.
they understood the topic. Support means that we know you're going through a hard time. What do you need from us?
Right.
You want a hug? You want a love?
No, you're
What do you
making
need?
me cry.
What?
Really, that's
No, I'm really like feeling choked up because you just don't hear it much.
But I think it's
Yeah.
a combination. See, people are busy blaming others that they didn't do for them what they didn't do. If you look and you actually state to the people that you love what your need is and you communicate effectively, you're going to get what you need. But if you're waiting for somebody else to do it for you, not in your marriage, not with your children, not with any work relationship, you're going to feel like you're going to be left wanting.
Right.
Don't come into the relationship hungry. Come into the relationship with expectations and then communicate those needs and expectations, and you'll be happier.
And I'll add it. I
That's
think,
great.
I think some of them think.
I have this problem my own personal. Like if I'm struggling with my kids or something, I just do not share it with anybody. It's absolutely terrible.
Stuck.
That's why we have Mavakshin.
I was going to say, do you at least talk about it with Vakshin?
Yes.
We're all over this.
And my wife.
We got to get back to that. We got to.
Sorry.
No. 1 second. But
You said you had to leave in an hour. I'm willing to go 2 hours on this.
That's it.
That's it. We'll Pesach shop next week, I guess. I don't know. We only live 4 hours from
No
here, you know?
Pesach shopping.
But to that point, I think in a lot of ways they think we're nuts. Like a lot of them feel like why are you so open? And do you want to be so accepting of your children? You know, aren't you concerned it's going to rub off to the next kid? And like all the classic things that people worry about, which initially we may not have been 100% sure that we were making the right choices, but we went with the direction and guidance that others, including yourself, gave us.
I feel like you guys shifted several times in this process.
Well, the situation kept shifting. We had to keep
Situation.
shifting with it.
What I want to curious, how so? Like
No, I'm saying even this morning you were talking to me because I have this. It's almost like a silent debate we have every time I see you. Is that my approach? Obviously, is like enormous amount of love and support, and most people, including mostly the guys in the house, are like, you need to beat us up a little bit more. And that is, he's been through your son has been through programs that were much tougher and then much lighter. And it's hard to know where he got better,
Right.
So.
We discussed that argument.
Right,
I
right.
think, what if it's a combination?
Right. So that's, I think, what you guys came up with. But I'm saying
don't know.
through
We're
the
not sure. I think
process,
there's been
you
different
guys
were
were
moments.
shifting.
Right. I think isn't that
That's what I'm
it's supposed to
saying.
be? Isn't that what life's all about? Aren't we?
Yeah.
Supposed to be
Growing,
and
evolving,
shifting, and we
shifting.
can change our mind on
But
things.
you see
come
why I'm
back.
very impressed with you guys. I'm saying you're saying it should be that way, but a lot of things we should be doing,
But I think
we're not doing.
another factor that might, really get into the nuance element of that is age. I think a 30-year-old and a 20-year-old do need to be dealt with differently.
Right.
Like, there's no one formula for anybody.
Right.
But when you're a little older and a little bit more established, you won't take too well to getting beat up. A kid who's 18 and emotionally 15. I'm not speaking about anyone in specific, just the concept. Some of them are actually looking for a little bit more structure. When
Structure is different than beating up.
Structure is very
So when I say beat up, like a 12-step home that's got pretty rigid rules. You get your phone this hours. You got to earn your rights to your phone, to your car, to your thing. For some people that's a good model.
Not for everyone.
But
My thing is I'm working out with the numbers I've seen. And the problem is that the numbers I've seen is that it looks really good while it's happening.
Right. You have compliance.
And then I'm seeing everybody failing later.
It's
So
like
I'm
what we
looking for the
talked about
very
before
long term.
with the idea of like you get the compliance during that time, but then you don't know what the
other side.
you don't know what the damage is. I don't read sign language. The damage is long term. You don't know like later like that the damage.
Right. No. So I'm not suggesting like a lifetime of this stuff, but in early recovery, get your act together. Learn those 12 steps. Do that fourth step, which I mean, we watched one individual take 4 months. He was talking about carpal tunnel syndrome from so much writing.
Right.
That wouldn't have. I don't know if that would have happened in a super free, loving, let's go jet skiing, eat pizza environment.
But I think actually that part is so
but that step did so much good for him.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I have mixed feelings about this.
I think, frankly,
What are your mixed feelings about it?
About that, I don't know that.
I think this. Listen, ultimately, the journey went exactly as Hashem wanted. But I think there was the early phase where you just.
But I want to hear Raizel's mixed feelings. Let's hear.
No, I think I've seen both. I've seen the idea that. I don't know. I don't want to speak specifically about our situation that I saw, but at the same time, I think that tough love doesn't work. I don't believe in it. I just don't. I mean, I know when I want to, like smack them and shut up and just be quiet.
Yeah.
Here's a device and be quiet. But I know at the same time that if I don't focus on the behavior that's in front of me, but rather about the need that's behind it, and I really tap into that, I don't know. I don't think that you have to earn your phone when you're 18 or 20. I think that's just, you're getting them to just do what they have to do so they know what they, at that time, at that moment. But at the same time, I think there has to be, and I saw that here in this home, there's still chores and there's still responsibilities and you still have obligations that you have to come to certain meetings. You have to do, there's still obligations.
Right.
But it's not like you are here and I'm here and so you have to earn.
All right,
we're human beings.
To be clear, I'm not talking.
I want her to work.
I'm not talking about a hierarchy.
She's got this.
I'm not talking about a hierarchy. It's not like you're better or I'm worse. But when a person is just flailing, sometimes they need someone to say, "Okay, this is where the road is." Like you're lost.
I think that happens. I think it's not permissive. It's not permissive parenting style. It's more about kind of gentle.
I'll tell you how we could thread this, that we can walk away agreeing somewhat.
All right, let's hear.
For sure, you need to get it. The journey has to get to a place where it's in the all love zone. And you're never going to have long-term sobriety if you don't end up in the all love zone, where you're doing it because you want to do it, because it's what you want, not because someone forced you.
Right.
I'm only making a case that, look at any residential treatment center. That it's a lockdown facility. Why is it locked down? Just let them walk out if they want.
I don't know. Why is it locked down?
Why is it locked down? That's a very good question.
Let's ask
Well, I'll tell you this. So first of all, I started out, I also went through a long process of change in this field. This is a long time I'm doing this. So my training is
How many
much
years
more
is it?
tough. 25 years or something like that. The training is I think it's 25 years. 25 years. The training is tough love. That's the training.
That's what everyone tells
The
me.
training is raise the bottom, make it tough for him, make a lot of rules, have a lot of boundaries, don't enable. That's the training. Interestingly, the 12 steps doesn't talk about this at all.
Right.
If you really study the 12 steps, I'm the most 12. What you said before, it was funny to me because it was like a 12-step home that beats you up. And that if you read.
Yeah, you hear that noise.
Can you
in the
tell him
background.
to stop?
This is live
Literally
television.
a lawnmower at the window. This is
Also, it's a leaf blower, and he's cleaning your backyard. It's a good
well,
thing.
how is that helpful for my podcast? It's not at all helpful.
All right, the next thing you got to get for the studio is soundproof walls.
Okay,
That's it.
wow.
I don't think anything's soundproof enough to have a leaf blower. All right, maybe it's not picking it up. But it's funny because the 12 steps, the more I study the 12 steps, it's so close to my approach that I don't understand how some people use the 12 steps for the tougher approach. It's all about offering a message. If somebody wants it, they could take it. If they don't want it, you're not supposed to force it on them. You're not. If you read, I mean, it's all over the book. Like, don't do
Ultimately,
it.
no one can get better until they want to get better.
Right. But my philosophy is that we can get people to a place of wanting to get better. The reason is that I believe that is because I believe everybody wants to get better. It's just a question about how much. Because I ask addicts, and I must have mentioned this before on the podcast or whatever, but I've asked addicts, do you want to stop using? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, do you want to continue using? Yes. But both questions are resounding, truthful, yes. So the question really isn't about do I want help or not want help. It's just, is my wanting help bigger than my not wanting help? And so I believe when you're talking about like an environment with a structure and there's holding, I believe in the holding part and I believe in the structure part. But it can't be that I'm going to make him compliant and he'll get there. That's the thing. That's the issue that I really have a problem
Here's
with.
maybe how I'll pivot within this very conversation. I think if you've come from a lockdown facility in a residential place,
Right.
To go from there right to here, it must work because clearly you're doing it.
I've seen it work for people.
Exactly, and I've seen
People
it work.
are shocked that it works here.
Yeah.
But
It's very
I,
shocking.
only looking at the story that I know best, which is our own, is that space in the middle seems to have added a lot of value. But for a period of time, not long term. There's no way that was not going to be long term. It was never the plan for it to be long term. In fact,
Right.
I gotta be careful with my words over here. We put a very short stint of time that we said that we want that to be. Our son chose to stay there on his own.
Right.
He wanted to stay there. He was
There's something wonderful
in a
about
certain
it.
sense. he was choosing to live in that environment until he said, okay, I got to move on, and that's when he wanted to come to you, and that's
So
when
I would
he came.
say that's the same answer that we talk about when we discuss this idea of why did it work for like when we were raised, like how we were raised, our generation, and the idea of like it worked for us, so why can't we try that with our children? We said no, and no is no, and our parents, if not,
Smacked us around.
all right. So, but we could say it worked for some. Even then, it worked for some, but not all. So, like maybe in this same idea, it could work for some, but as a general, for all,
Well,
it's not going to work.
In overall parent raising, certain kids are more resilient. And some kids, one whack from a parent does them in, and for another one, they just brush it off and move right on.
I don't think anyone can brush off at this point, this generation.
Right.
That's
Well, that's another conversation. But I think
I gotta listen to that podcast about the highly sensitive people because that is really what we're dealing with all these addictions.
I think you know it all, but I think for some people it was brand new ideas, but you can listen to it.
No, but I'm saying I've heard people talk about it. And someone's asked at one of these Kesher Nafshi things, asked me like, how do I identify this addict when they're young? And they're always the sensitive kid.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
like
know
that's-
it. The kid whose label in his shirt is making him sure when or when their sibling is chewing on the cereal too loudly and they freak out. That's the kid to keep
That's
an eye
good.
on. Throw as much love as you can then.
Right, in that direction.
Before things go.
Okay, we're going in a million different directions. Although I do like to debate this topic, but I don't feel like I'm getting into the depth of what we do here. It is very fascinating because if I didn't see it work, what I do, I would be like everybody else.
Right.
Like I don't buy that you're. People have just think it's like laissez-faire, like go and chill out. It's
you have rules.
definitely not happening.
There are rules in this house.
But the amount of tolerance and love that's going on here, it just sounds like, really? I feel like these people have to be controlled on some level in order that they could be stable, that they could get there. Logic says that. The problem is addiction is not logical. Right. It doesn't follow logic the way everything else does. It's basically taking an adult and they're acting like a child in emotionally. So to start treating them like an adult when they can't handle it is really the issue. So my struggle has been, why I opened this place, is that I'm watching 20% success rate be the norm of a great program.
Is it even at 20%?
Right, I'm saying the best in the country, 20% is like
That's considered really great.
That's great. Now, how you take if you had a cancer ward and you had a 20% success rate, you're gonna still do some research, figure out how to up that.
Those numbers.
But for some reason, people haven't done any major changes and say, hey, that doesn't seem to be working. And we're talking about this program where I'm looking at numbers like 70%. Now, we are working with a close-knit community, so there's more support. And I would like to give it, to have this model stretched out into the world so we could do more research. But the 20%, I would shut down immediately if it was 20%. Like that's not acceptable on any level. And you can't just say, well, addicts don't get better. What are you talking about?
No, I agree. And I think the area of my disagreement is getting highlighted when I don't actually feel that. I don't doubt for a second that in our son's case, he had to spend time in this loving environment if he was going to make it in the real world. You have to, to your point, I'll give it the analogy. You can fight cancer by radiation and killing it, or by boosting immunotherapy, boosting boosting the love, boosting how healthy they are. And you've used similar examples, filling up the gas tank and all that stuff.
Right.
So I'm in agreement. It's gotta. This is where it has to for sure end. You're saying it's got to start and end here. I'm maybe saying it's got to for sure get to this point.
And I will say that he's got a lot of years of experience over you.
You've
but
got
okay.
tons of years.
You're pulling rank for me. I like
Little.
that. I like that.
Keep in mind. Keep in mind.
He's filling rank. Okay. Is your mic getting a little in the camera? Lower the mics and do this. You see this?
Oh,
That
okay.
you can still see your face.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, you can do that. Okay, fine.
Wow, how cool is
You
this?
can move it around. It doesn't have to be uncomfortable. It just, if it covers your whole face, you're not gonna see it. Oh, I see you glazing over a tiny bit on this topic, a little bit.
like when
So
I'm
we're
bored or
moving
something?
back out of this topic. No, because you're like okay,
Did that disconnect?
yeah, you have to plug that back in. You think you could plug it back in? What happened there?
I'm not sure.
I hope that thing was working the whole time.
A little aggressive on the mic.
That's all right. It's all right.
Testing.
It's a fun button to play with. It ends up. I pulled out this mic for one whole episode,
No.
and it was a disaster. It was a great episode too.
Oh, such a
We end up
bummer.
having to do it a different way, and
That's
but
not fun.
the mic was just pulled out, and it was bad sound for the whole episode. I think you mentioned to me like there was bad sound. I don't know if it was you or somebody. You always give me comments
early on. Well, that was early. That was like,
No,
like
this was a more recent one,
podcast
so maybe
one
it
or
was
two.
someone else. Meanwhile,
back at the ranch.
back at the ranch. Okay, there are a couple of things that have happened because you've been through this process with your son, and you guys did the Haggadah. And there
We
were
did that. Nothing. I had nothing to do with that.
nothing to do with
We're a
Haggadah.
team. Everything we do is a
Well,
win.
it's okay.
But the truth is,
talk
okay,
about
I
it.
want to
have-
talk. I will like to talk about that Haggadah, but not really. I'll tell you what. Give me a second. Give me a second.
for it,
I
go
just
for
want to
it.
move product, man. You know?
I mean, okay, I'm always very impressed that you guys are just you're doing a lot of things connected to this, and you've been motivated to do even more based on this. You're saying your podcast was before and your studying was before. And
no, but there's no question that it threw gas on the podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
right, which is wild. But as parents, I really, because we went on it for a minute and then we got off it. The biggest complaint I get is again this like loneliness. I'm in this like alone. Who's doing this? Where did you guys reach out to besides your family? Like, what was the process of like, what the heck are we supposed to do here?
Great
If
question.
you feel comfortable sharing the process, because there are a lot of parents out there that are like, I don't know what to do.
All right, so
Yeah.
I'll share being mindful that my son's story is his story, and one day, you know,
I'll have him on.
I was saying one day he'll be
He's
here.
ready to go on. I just didn't have time yet.
So he'll share his story. I can speak from the parent side at least a little bit. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's hard to say you got lucky, but we did get lucky. Listen, it's all from Hashem, so we did get lucky. Some people have to be, the addict is languishing, and it's the situation is just like grinding, and it's a crisis, but no one wants to deal with it, and they're at home or they're on the street or whatever. In our case, because of the way in which his addiction manifested, he ended up in the hospital. So there was no, let's see what, how are we going to handle the situation? The situation was thrown upon us. It was, YY says that, sometimes greatness is thrust upon you. So this situation was thrust upon us. We were now in a situation, he's in a hospital now, and they're going to release him in 7 days, 10 days, 14 days, but it's not a long time, and we need answers, and we need them fast, because they won't release them until you have where to send them. The protocols better than I do.
And it was COVID.
And it was COVID, which
you were
which
closed?
threw a total wrench
And
into,
I was closed.
into everything.
Was I one of those first phone calls?
Absolutely.
No.
By the way, because we had heard that thing on Coach
Podcast,
Menachem,
yeah.
by the way,
Yeah.
Had you been open then, you probably would have skipped some of these other places
Yeah.
and come straight
Again,
here.
everything's from Hashem.
Right.
It's ultimately from Hashem. There's a guy, he's in the industry, you may know him, you may not know him, Asher Gottesman.
Sure.
So, I know everyone's got different things, and I don't know who's talking to who and what, but Asher,
I love
is
Asher.
an old, he's a little older than I am, but his friends with family members, and we went to a similar yeshiva out in LA, Torah Semis, and one of my brothers who does some work with him said, just call him. And I got to tell you, he was an early tzaddik in our lives. He wanted nothing from us. He never pushed us to send our kid to his places. My kid never went to any of his places. We're still friends today. We learn for 5 minutes Torah on the phone every Friday. I wouldn't be a Lubavitcher if I didn't do that. So we do that. But he
guided us a
he was
lot,
one of
yeah.
the first people who told us. He actually said the same thing you said, but not as developed. That there's no such things. He says you're gonna be okay. You're gonna get through this. He says right now it looks like there's no hope. It looks like there's no end. This is the worst thing going on. He says I know how you feel because I've been there. Because he's pretty open about his journey as well. He says I've been there, and he says you're gonna get through this. Let me help you.
Wait, so hold on. So at this point, okay, you're in, what you would consider crisis mode. Before
Yeah.
you found out there's no such thing as a crisis.
Oh yeah, we were a full-time crisis.
We were full
You-
crisis.
full-on
I couldn't
crisis.
breathe. Our kid is in the hospital.
How was it between you guys? I just don't usually get parents on that could like
You were crying a lot.
Let's put it this
A
way.
lot of crying.
I found it's interesting because
Yeah.
I was super strong, like when dealing with the hospitals
all
and
insurance.
like all these things that I never even
something you
thought
had control over a little.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
exactly those things, and also I hate to say it, it's horrible, but there's a lot of, you suddenly find out who you know who's got connections to where. Like, remember, it was COVID. The hospitals, the psych wards they had like armchairs like this with 50 people. You could sit there for 2 days before you were seen.
A week.
And just till you were seen, forget about finding a placement. And you find friends who have friends, and
we had a good friend who helped us get him into the hospital by us in Boston, the top McLean hospital.
But even just to get get through the emergency room, so you find friends. So
you have to tell him that story.
Which part?
The one about how calm you were, and the one where that's what you were. You're not going to say the story.
I'm not sure.
Say the story.
I'll say the story if you don't
Okay,
remember.
you say the story.
It was because
He needs to take a break anyway. He's moving very fast. I'm getting nervous.
no, basically you're in the waiting room and you're waiting and nothing's happening, and there's other people that are screaming and yelling like, why are we not being seen? And eventually he got seen and he was placed, but we heard back from a friend who helped us get him into the hospital.
Is a great story.
And he said, like, I was so impressed by the father because he was calm, he was patient, he was level-headed, he was respectful, and it was just throughout such a terrible, difficult, challenging time with so much going on for him and not knowing what was happening with his child, he was able to stay grounded, level-headed, and he was blown away by it.
I'm going to add.
I think that's
This is
why-
someone who's working in the hospital.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Let me throw little details on this. So, like I said, you could spend 2 days until
You think it's possible for a couple to ever tell a story and not add? It's not, right?
Not us.
It's one of my favorite things to do with my wife. To tell a story, and we
you
have
get distracted
two
and come
completely
down
different
with it. Yeah.
versions.
No, that too.
I wasn't even sure. I have no memory. I wasn't sure what story she was talking about. But the point is that I leaned on a Chabad colleague who knows I can tell you off the air, but a real well-known top doctor. And he called in a favor from this guy, and this guy got us shuffled through the program in 3 hours or 4 hours versus 2 or 3 days.
I don't know what.
And so I guess I had a certain sense that, like, okay, people are doing favors for us. Be cool. Don't be like everyone else that's screaming at the nurses. So I went to the nurse column. I said, maybe we can move him to the pediatric area, even though he's above the age, just because people are yelling. It's scaring me, so it's for sure scaring him. I just came cool and calm. And when you're nice to people, they actually respond better. And
Who knew?
Shockingly,
That's my whole philosophy. We're not getting back there. Go on.
But they were blown away by that.
But I was just doing it because I was trying to be efficient. But that doctor, who's I'll tell you later the name. He it was a huge Kiddush Hashem.
Right.
He was very impressed with that.
Right,
So,
and it helped. It helped get
it
where we
greased
needed.
certain wheels later on in the process.
I could tell you, working in this, and I mentioned it a couple of times, if parents are involved and interested, and this is something because I hope parents watch what you guys are saying. It's very rare that parents talk about the story even at all. When a parent is like being complimentary and being quiet and calm and like, okay, let's be part of the process together, it helps the people working with it.
Absolutely. I mean, this is with parents, teachers. I mean, this is like
It's with this is not new, right?
Yeah.
I know the same thing happens with teachers and principals and all that stuff.
But you asked the question about loneliness. I mean, of course, in the beginning, there was so much loneliness, and it was so much fear, so much loneliness, and like you said, how he managed. So he was strong and was dealing with it, but he was also like falling apart a lot. You were crying a lot. Yeah, I couldn't cry for some reason.
I think there were some pent up tears that finally found a reason to let him out.
I just wanted to cry, but I just couldn't. I was so in such survival mode. I was like frozen for a long time. It took me a long time until I was able to finally just cry a little bit. But it was really, how did we manage together? We were really, I mean, like he would speak to Asher, get some advice, come back, tell me about, okay, this is what we're doing now. Okay, great. And I looked up to him for guidance in that because he was the one who was dealing with the people. I mean, here and there, I mean, as you know, like I would send you voice notes here and there where I needed to, but overall, Nechemia took the lead on a lot of it.
I'll tell you, there should be a job out there. I know Amudim and Relief, they provide service like this. There needs to, I speak to Devar Shapta about this all the time. There needs to be certain people who their whole job is, someone's in crisis, I am now your personal case manager. I'm going to help you navigate everything from hospitals, insurance, treatment centers,
For pay, obviously. It could be a
is
job.
this behavior
Right.
codependent? Is this not codependent? Is this too far? Like we would bother everybody and anybody.
Right.
You know, you
got many of
when we
them.
felt like we were overwhelming, we just find some other sucker
Okay.
to
I
help
don't
us
know about
navigate and be better parents, etc. I'm
Right.
you know, I don't mean that.
But I think,
No.
I don't know. I just
I can
feel-
tell you, no, it's important because some parents do overwhelm you, but usually they're taking out their frustration on you. You guys were asking questions, and that doesn't usually overwhelm people.
You know what another big help was? Al-Anon.
Oh yeah.
Al-Anon was
Absolutely.
huge. So
For
it's
you,
interesting.
not
To
for me
your
so much in the
point
beginning.
about following the program, Al-Anon was a huge help, but it also became so clear to me how the Jewish road to recovery is different than the Goyish road. You know, that whole notion.
How's
Yeah, that whole notion, like, well, my kid relapsed, they're out on the street. We don't do that. We don't. You know.
I hope we don't ever have to do that. We don't know. There's some people that
Even if we have to create a boundary and not let them live at home, our kid is never going to be starving on this unless they choose to. There will always the Jewish community helps itself. The Sanis of the world help people. You know, whereas they are like, yep, cut them off. Just yep, let them out there. That if they die, they die. That well, too bad. That was their choice. You put up your boundary. You know, Jewish recovery is a little.
Softer and loving?
It's
Yeah.
got more love, more kindness, and hold space. Even the addict is struggling. They got a situation. They got to call it a disease. I know even that's a debate whether you want to call it a disease. Whatever it is, they're dealing with something that's right now not in their control. Until they're ready to get control over it, it's not in their control at the moment. That you have to have boundaries so your house doesn't go completely crazy. You have to have boundaries so you yourself don't go crazy. But unlike the classic Al-Anon, which is goodbye, come back to me when you're ready to get some help and for real.
Right.
You know, I
I don't know that Al-Anon necessarily says that you have to do that. I think that the idea is boundaries. This leaf guy is really.
It's terrible.
He's like, I think this area is clean already.
We should just invite him in.
I don't know about
Just text the guy like.
that. I don't think he's on his phone. He's got to see a text.
It's pretty funny. It's pretty
He's
funny.
back. He's like hitting the window.
There's definitely no leaves here at this point.
Okay, so
No. But I just want to say because I think
there's a difference between the literature in Al-Anon and the culture of Al-Anon,
Right.
and that's the important thing. It's a lot of times when you have issues, people have issues with Judaism, and they're like, and you're like, but that's not Judaism. What you're talking about? That's just Jews
Making up
that are
rules.
bothering you, and
Love
they're
it.
using
I
their
think-
stuff.
I think that's an excellent analogy that you just brought.
Right. So Al-Anon is in the literature. It's loving and wonderful, and like it's obviously you're taking care of yourself, but it's not about beating up anybody else or forcing them to do anything. It's not really about that. But the culture became a lot of hurt people that were like trying to like control the situation, and when they don't realize that the first step is you have no control.
Right.
right.
And ignoring it. That's the hardest step because you have to say, I have no control. And I'm hearing that a lot in your story. Like, you're trying really hard to make the right choices, and at the end of the day, there's no control.
Right.
Right. I think, and that was another piece. I mean, not to get too spiritual on this podcast there, but I think it deepens
spiritual.
their relationship with Hashem.
Absolutely.
You know, recognizing that Hashem's running the world. Hashgacha Pratis it's actually a central fundamental of the Jewish faith, which is Hashem's running the world, not me. And yes, the 12, it's a central piece of the 12 steps in the recovery. But a lot of us, we grew up with it, and we're not overthinking it. And in fact, it's really, the addict hits a situation where they have no choice but to recognize that they don't control anything. So do the family members.
Yeah.
Is the situation is so crazy and so ridiculous that you really have to give it over to the higher power. That doesn't mean stop doing the homework, stop finding out what's the best next step to take, but recognizing that you're going to do the best you can and then let it go.
Well, let me fast forward a little. Was there at a certain point, because it sounds like the beginning definitely was like,
Hard.
holy cow, where are we going? Really hard, lonely. Was there a time where there was a shift like that, or maybe it's just been a gradual idea, but like, okay, this is what it is, and we're...
So interesting that you're saying that. I don't know that there was a shift. I feel like Nechemia knew this all along, and I'm not just saying this. He was guiding this whole process, and this has been something that in our marriage always that I've learned. Nechemia is a very growth mindset kind of person, and something I've learned from him. I don't know that I was so
We should come more often.
growth mindset kind of person.
amazing.
Sonny, you bring out the best in her.
Yeah, very funny. But it's true. It's something that I've learned from, Nechemia has more. Listen, he lost his mother when he was 9 years old.
Oh no, we're not doing that.
he went
We're
through
doing
a
low.
lot.
We're getting to your father's book, and it's like, yeah.
So he understands what a crisis really is. It kind of changes. My mother, my father, I had a very, idealistic, a beautiful childhood, and I had a beautiful life, and I didn't experience it. This was the first real, I would say, I had smaller bumps, but this was a real challenge for me. And he took the lead in that, and I looked at him for that. And that idea that I think he knew that. So that's why it resonated so much when he heard it later on. And yes, Nechemia said to me so many times, he's like, we're not just going to only be about addiction and this recovery and how we're dealing with this. We are going to live our lives. We took our family to Florida. We had tickets already scheduled. We went to Florida for February break. It was the hardest thing. My stomach was turning. I didn't want to be near a pool, near a beach, but we did it. And it was those moments that really helped us. We were going to do our kitchen over. I said, no, let's just forget it. Who needs a kitchen? I don't need a kitchen. We may need the money for rehab. We may need the money let's not do a kitchen now. Chaim was insistent. We waited so many years. We're a shluchim. We cook a ton of food in our house. We're constantly hosting guests and Sederim and everything.
The kitchen was basically a treif. We had one sink. I mean, it was ridiculous.
It was time. It was desperate. It wasn't treif though. Come on.
I said basically.
Basically true.
Anyway, we did the kitchen. I'm picking out granite and countertops and cabinets, and I'm like, because he had this
Mind
idea.
you got to see pictures. She did a fine job for a woman in crisis.
Yeah, that'll be another podcast.
But I'm saying
the granite kitchen.
I think that was the I don't know that there was a shift suddenly. I think that he knew this subconsciously, and when it was crisis mode, we need to figure things out, he did what he had to do. But otherwise, I think this was a leading. And I turned to him many times, even after I say, how did you know this? What was it? Yes, Asher was guiding him a lot of the time. You were guiding us through different periods of time. And I think that idea that you have to keep living your life. I have 6 other children that need me. I have a Chabad house that needs to be run. It was COVID, so things were a little quieter. We took time for our family. We took time for each other. I feel like we got the memo that we can't let this break us. We have to figure out how to take this.
I think that was the memo. I think that, because I'm thinking of this question. I don't know the answer to that.
I know.
But I think the last thing you said maybe is the thing is that I knew that it was a make it or break it kind of situation. I said either this is going to break our family, our marriage, our shlichus. This is either going to break us or we're going to grab this. What is
There are Chabad rabbis that have left their shlichus when crisis
I've met some.
and they did the right thing. I'm not saying that they did the wrong thing.
And that
it
was
was the right thing for them. I'm not against it. I want to make that clear.
Right.
And I'm saying at the same time, for us, we were very happy with our life where we were. We needed to figure out how we're going to make this work for us.
There's a great line.
Right.
It's actually that first Pesach. By the way, little gifts of COVID
Yeah.
is that we never leave for Pesach because we have to do it. We were able to go away at Pesach.
Nobody was coming out.
And we
Because
went.
no one was
We went as a family to my brother's house, brother in Atlanta, and I'm sorry, no, it was his son's bar mitzvah. Anyways, there was a line said in one of those speeches from they quoted some from Rabbi Dr. Jonathan Sachs. He says
You a doctor? I didn't know that.
a doctor of philosophy. not
Okay,
a-
I mean, yeah, doctor. I didn't know that.
But he said
Lord.
Lord.
Rabbi.
That's what it was, right? no.
Lord.
Sachs,
Anyways,
yeah.
so he said,
I get it, doctor.
he said the answer to why is what, and it's true in the Hebrew. Lama is lema.
Lemon, right.
So and that sunk so deep.
Yeah, I remember
He
that.
said, when we spoke about
Yeah.
that a lot, and he says, "Why is this happening? I don't know why, but the question is, what? The only way I'm going to be okay with the why is this happening is if I do something about it. We got to do something about this." And we both, respectively, in our own ways, and some areas together, said, "Okay, we're going to turn this crisis into something." So. Podcast, the Haggadah, the JSA, which is a child of yours, really, or a grandchild of yours.
We'll talk about JSA. Oh, okay, sorry, I'm stuck in
No.
this. How you mentioned you had 6 other kids.
Yeah.
It was.
I'm milking you for everything. I'm sorry. I gotta
No,
get
it's
other
fine.
parents.
It's fine.
But I'm really curious. How did it affect
Oh,
the other
it's
kids?
so hard for them.
It was
Very
it
hard
was
for
challenging. We like to say we have 2 families because we have 3 older kids
Mm-hmm.
and there's a space and then there's 4 younger ones. So the 3 older kids knew right away what was going on, and it impacted
very,
them.
very hard
It
for
was
them.
traumatic for them. It was
Very much.
It was hard for them.
What part of it was hard?
Am I also an addict? Do I also have problems? Am I going to also show, is this going to show up for me? Is my,
I think that was more the younger kids. I think the older kids were more like, really, like now we're in the spotlight because one thing we did early on, but guided by our child, is we didn't kick it under the rug. So we were pretty public about it early.
well, our child was open about it.
right,
We were supporting our child's choice.
Right. We let him, like, we were never more revealing than he was.
We tried, at least. That was our goal. Yeah.
Right.
And because of and social media, so everything's all out there. I mean, whatever. Some of the stuff can make you laugh.
But
But one thing, so because it was so public, so I think the older kids were struggling, like really, like you do crazy, but leave us alone. Let's live our.
Some of them.
Let us mind our own little life.
others felt that they, I'm similar to this sibling. Well, I also have that. There was other instances where, one of them was, experimenting with something, and our reaction was immediately to like drive down and like be there for them.
We totally overreacted.
Right,
Another
okay.
child
Like completely.
had some. I don't know if we overreacted. We showed this child that like, you need to take into account that you have a sibling that struggles with this. You have to be aware of this,
Right.
and at the same time, that's a balance. Like they're still their own people, and you have to let them live their life. So
Right.
that. And then, the younger siblings, they
We didn't tell them right away.
no, we did not tell them at all. We actually, their sibling told them.
Did they talk about it? Like, was there like conversations
It's open
about
now.
it?
It's open conversation in the house. Like,
in
Right.
the beginning, when our son was living nearby in treatment and was coming home often and would talk about it, yes. And I actually think that it was the greatest gift we gave our family. I think it's the greatest gift
Can you
that
explain that?
our son gave to the family, because I didn't grow up knowing, to me, an addict was somebody who was dirty and was homeless and was disgusting. That's what my understanding of addiction was.
Right.
And I knew nothing. And I was there as a community leader, helping people, and yet I didn't know this. And this is something that Nechemia and I are very passionate about, is like, I think that Shluchim leaders in the community need to be educated on this topic. It is sad that we have rabbis and people in our community that are not understanding it the way that I'm talking, understanding it that way. They need to know it. They need to know it in their heart and their soul. Because if you want to be there for people, you got to know this. And my children are growing up around the Shabbos table that there's discussion around it. They'll constantly, so is he never going to be able to have grape juice and wine? Will he be able to drink it at his wedding? Like the questions that come up,
Right.
conversations around it. Now they know that it's something real and it's something tangible, and good people, like the best people in the world that I've met are addicts, like the kindest, most loving, warm, and the people that are working on themselves. You want to talk about what a chassid is? That's chassidus. You want to talk about somebody who's, these are the people that are doing the hard work every single day.
So how did it
So to
affect
them-
your family for the good? You were starting.
I'm saying,
to-
so for them to grow up with that kind of education, that kind of awareness, that kind of discussion, they're not going to think that an addict looks like what I thought an addict was going to be like. They're going to be educated in that way, in a positive way, to understand that actually you have to be aware of this. That's one.
and even deeper, we're authentic people. We live authentic lives. We don't kick stuff
Right.
under the rug. We talk about issues, even if they're unpleasant, even if they're uncomfortable. I would say maybe our kids are relatively young. We don't have any kids married off yet. Our kids know they can come and tell us anything.
Any questions.
and that's from this.
I think it's an outcome.
It's very much a result of this.
I think we were in that direction. That's who we are as naturally.
Right.
Nechemia and I are both very open, honest, real people. But I think this kind of even took us even deeper with our children. They can tell us anything. They know that they can tell us anything.
And they've told us things that like
Other parents have no ideas about their kids.
my mind spins. I'm like, oh my Lord, did I have to know that? But I'd rather know that than not know that.
Right.
Would I rather them hide that from me? I definitely don't want them hiding it from me.
It's not easier.
Like,
Right.
our kids have friends and they're doing things that their parents would go bananas about. And we know about it because our kids tell us stuff, and we're like, which would I rather? Would I rather my kids just hide everything from me,
Right.
and then one day I find out that for the last X amount of years have been one big lie, or would I rather know the truth and be in on it?
But I think even like you said, so what's the benefit in that? Again, my kids know that it doesn't matter where they are in Yiddishkeit and where they are in Chassidishkeit is something that's important to us too, and where they are in their connection to Hashem. We, as their parents, love them and accept them for who they are, because they are a piece of Hashem and they are our children, and we love them no matter what they're doing. Our love is not dependent on their behavior or what their actions are, but we love them for who they are.
And they saw that
And
in
saw
real
that.
time.
They saw that with their sibling, and they were like, and they knew that. And I think that the other way, when you see your brother or sister being kicked out of the house or not being given the same amount of love, you're like, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to do that's going to make them upset? They're going to send me out. And it creates a certain sense of fear. I heard a great story from, I think it was Shimon Russell who said this story. I actually don't remember, but somebody was saying that he had a child who was not religious anymore. And they had taken the Avi Fishoff method of accepting and loving unconditionally. And their second child, or I don't know if it was the first or second child, another sibling, it was time for shidduchim, and they were looking for a shidduch, and Baruch Hashem, they made a beautiful shidduch. And at the Shever Brachas, the father of the Kala went over to his mechutan, and he said to him, like, I'm just curious, like, when you heard about a family, you heard that we have another child who's not religious and who's not, lives like us, and I'm curious why you went for the shidduch anyway. I mean, now you could ask it because it was all done, right?
Done.
Yeah, signed and sealed now.
So his mechutan told him that basically he had gone to his Rav, and he asked his Rav, he said, this really good name came up, but they have a child who's not religious and who's not living the same life, and I'm a little bit, hesitant about it. And he said, well, you should find out one thing. Find out if this family, how they treat this child. If this child is accepted in the home and is loved and is
how the
part
parents
of
treated the kid.
Right.
if this other child is part of the family's close to them, this child is part of the family, then you should go for the shidduch. If chas v'shalom, otherwise, if this child is like not a part of the family, is not connected, is on the outskirts, you shouldn't go for that shidduch, because basically, and what was he really saying is that it shows that whatever your son's going to go through in life, these kind of in-laws are going to be there for him. They're going to love him no matter what. They're going to be there for him. And I think that's the same idea. Like, our children need to know that it's not dependent on what their behavior is. I mean, yes, sure, we want them to behave good and live a life full of values, and we're hoping to instill that. But we love you no matter what.
Right. Wow.
I think what's it called?
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you another question. Sorry.
It's your podcast. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Okay. So now I'm going to switch it around. Have you, what are you sharing about your own, or at all, your own emotional feelings and all this stuff with your kids? Is there anything, and does it matter the older kids or the younger kids?
Our own experiences?
I'm saying you guys went through a hellish experience at some level. Well, not at some level. Pretty bad experience, because life threw you a really intense curveball. And it definitely affected your emotional life and all that stuff. And have you shared that with your kids? It's a curiosity question, because I don't even know what the right answer is.
Like Gladys says, you should see your kids cry. Your kids shouldn't see you cry.
Who says that?
Well, you said her name. You're breaking all the rules.
No, it might be a good rule.
No, one of the women at the JSA meeting.
Okay.
Which.
Let's go to JSA right afterwards.
No, just so people know what it is.
Okay.
It's a Jewish Support Anonymous. It's a Jewish recovery meeting that we developed based on something that you developed. We can talk about it later or not at all. But there's a woman who comes there. She's like 80, 85. She's so wise. She's so wonderful. She's in recovery for like 50 years.
Yeah, 50 years, yeah.
And
oh, wow.
Every word that comes out of her mouth is just like pearls of wisdom.
Literally.
So go ahead.
No, so she said, because another person in the meeting was asking that question, like, shouldn't they know how hard it is? And she said, it's better for your children, for you to see your children cry than for your children to see you cry. And I think about that.
But explain it. She said the crying.
You can explain it.
Because I forgot. I don't remember all the details.
She was saying that it's okay.
Meaning crying waters the seeds, helps you grow.
Crying's not a bad thing, right? But for children, especially younger children, I think
they need to see some strength.
They need to see strength. I mean, they need to see your humanness, obviously. You need to be human with them.
So how do you do this balance?
I think it's
how
a balance,
did you guys
because
do
if you
this
have
balance?
your support in other places, you're not coming to your children hungry for that in relationship. Your children don't need to be your friends.
I'm going to pull.
Your children don't need to be your therapist.
I'm going to pull a line from Shea Staub. Leaning on your children for emotional support, and that's not what you were suggesting, but leaning on your children for emotional support is emotional incest. That's how he phrases it.
Okay.
So it really is.
So you can't get your support from your kids.
I see parents do it a lot.
But it's okay for your kids to see that you're human.
He definitely made it gross. Made it very gross.
Yeah, that's a reel that maybe should never happen.
But
Shays knows how to slam it home.
No, but to that same point, we've definitely shown the kids
That it's
that's okay to have feelings. Like the kid's
Absolutely.
anxious about something. I said, yeah, I'm anxious about that about something. For you, it's your upcoming test or whatever.
Yeah, you've
For
told
me,
them.
I have triplet bris. I'm a mile. Do you know I'm a mile?
I did not know
I'm a
that.
mile. I have triplet bris
pretty
tomorrow,
cool.
and kids are designed funny or whatever. And yeah, so I'm a little nervous too. But I'm gonna push.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna push through those nerves. I'm gonna feel uncomfortable until I'm done.
Modeling.
But I am in my discomfort.
Yeah.
But I'm not putting it on you, and I'm not going to yell at you because I'm uncomfortable at the moment.
At least
that,
I tried.
that would be abuse. But it's okay to feel scared, nervous. That's human.
Right.
Right.
And so I think it's like, yeah, they knew that it was hard for us. Sure. They knew. And it's the older siblings specifically knew it. And they tried to keep themselves. That's another, like their siblings have to
There's
like.
some secondary trauma there.
Right. Like that they have to, like, I got to really keep myself in line. Mommy and Tati have been through enough. They don't need more. So there's an element of that. Older children can pick up on that. So you have to
Right.
be, it's a balance. And they should know that it was hard for you. And they should, but again, we
Don't
wanna-
fall apart in
Yeah.
front of them.
Be their strength.
Fall apart, but fall apart with each other, with a
Right.
therapist.
No,
at
I'm saying from-
an
Definitely
element.
let your emotions out with your spouse, exactly, but not with your kid. I just no, not part of it.
Wow. Okay. No, I zoned in on this topic. I just zoned in because it was fascinating because everybody does it differently, but it's been a wild process watching you guys just growing through this. And it's also really fun to watch you guys.
Thank
The
you.
gift of gab here is hilarious. It's
like
just like,
We love talking.
you guys should just have a podcast with just you too. Also, I'm just throwing that out there as a suggestion. You don't even need a guest.
We need a moderator because we'll just talk over each other.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a trick to talking over each other in podcasts. You should know this. Get the headphones
Why?
because you hear yourself talking over the other person, and it's really annoying after a while.
Oh, that's how we
So
gotta
you
ring
just
it.
stop. No, I haven't worn headphones in a while, but I noticed the podcast that I did with headphones, like no one talks over each other after the first
Hear
5
the
minutes.
other person.
Because it's annoying to you. You're like, oh my God, that's annoying that I'm talking over this
that's
person.
so
Because you hear it.
Oh, okay.
Our brain filters it out. Anyway, I went that from the Haley good Joe Rogan. He still wears it. The JSA for a second, because I talk about Mavaksham Anonymous, which is my group of guys that we grow. And it's been awesome. You got inspired by that. Could you tell me what it is? And I'm curious what your group is like, because it's definitely different than.
Yes, I'll tell you what it's like.
Give us a little more time on that.
And to your point of or to Raizel's point about like that other people need to learn about recovery and mental health and my hope is that people don't have to go through a crisis to learn, and that's going to be that is already the larger dream with JSA, is to try to get it duplicated. So I heard your podcast about Mavaksham, which is basically your group of buddies that you get together with. I don't know, is it once a week?
Once a week.
Once a
At
week.
least once a week.
At least once a week, just to schmooze out the stresses of life. Not everything should be shared with a spouse. Should I start throwing my directors out? I won't.
If you want to.
I'm
not stopping you.
In Perky Avos says, "Altar b'sichim isha." You shouldn't talk so much with a woman, which that doesn't go so well in 2023. But at least one of the person, I think it's Shimshon Rafal Hirsch, says not everything you need to say to your wife. Certain things say for your friends. So you were talking about your Mavaksham, where you guys meet to just share some of this. Life is tough, and I heard that, and I said, there's got to be. First, I wanted to just create the exact same thing over here. Let's have a bunch of guys. I'm not in recovery from substances, so we can have cigars and scotches. But what slowly evolved was that there really is no Jewish. Again, we're in Muncie now. We're in a Frum community. There are certain kind of Jewish recovery groups.
Yeah.
I mean, just because I see on some of these chats, so I know that they exist over here. But outside of a really densely Jewishly populated area, it just doesn't exist. So it kind of like evolved in shapes and flavors. But I said, let's have a Jewish recovery support group where you go to an AA meeting. I've gone to open meetings with my child and just or Al-Anon meetings. There's. If you're not in the basement of a church, staring at a cross, they certainly don't get the challenges of what a Jewish life is like. For us, there is that added layer, the stigma and the shame, which we work through pretty fast, miraculously. But there is the whole Jewish component to the journey, frankly, mental health is I mean, we should talk about that's, I know, another conversation that you talk about a lot. Is it always tied to mental health? There's always a mental health component on some level connected to it. It seems like the Jews love the mental health space, and we really want to be fixing it, and everyone's suffering from it. Maybe the whole generation right now. COVID certainly threw gas on that fire. So the idea was to create a kind of like a catch-all 12-step based recovery meeting but for Jews, by Jews, for Jews. So where someone can fetch and say, my adult son who's supposed to be the doctor is now is 40 years old and still living in the basement. Something that someone else can't. There's an extra Jewish frustration on that.
Right.
And obviously we can't have a Jewish support recovery meeting for alcohol, for narcotics, for gamblers, for sex. So it kind of has two components. It's catch-all,
right,
and it's not there to replace you.
You don't need even an addiction.
Right.
You need to be struggling.
Just life.
A struggle.
You need to, because I worked with
Jewish
the word
strugglers.
mavakshim. Mavakshim means seeking.
Seekers, right?
So I adjusted it to strugglers.
Right.
If you're struggling, and you're a Jew, and you want to get some support, and you can commit to keeping what goes on in this room private to this room, you're welcome. And we're going to use the 12 steps, because otherwise it becomes a kvetchy Jewish free-for-all. Everyone's kvetching and then yenting, and that doesn't work. So we're using the structure of the 12-step meetings so that it doesn't. So everyone's got a time limit. It's 12-step base. Each time we try to focus on one of the steps. So otherwise it would just become a Jewish free-for-all, which doesn't work. And so it's catch-all, and it's Jewish specific, and it's launched and it's going, and we have
How has it been going?
it.
Are you involved also? Or you don't
Yes,
join this?
Well, it's Nechemia's dream, and he's
Right.
made it happen. He's done the legwork of it. I show up.
You show up.
She shows up, but they'd rather
what I wanna do.
rather hear her talk than me. That's for sure.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, from the Al-Anon groups that I go to, mostly women,
Yeah.
and this group also, there's guys, but it's more a majority of ladies that are coming.
I think women are way more comfortable to talk about their feelings.
They are.
Guys are getting there, but we're so
Not
far
all.
behind.
I mean, I don't know if it's a rule of thumb, but at least for what I've seen in the area.
All right, the Perlman brothers for sure know how to talk about their feelings.
No.
Okay.
We do vulnerable. Fake vulnerable.
I love
They
that.
Oh,
I'm so using
the
that.
Schusterman boys use it too.
I only talk for myself because we're really good at like talking about vulnerable, and then afterwards, well, I'll talk about myself. Maybe everybody else is doing real vulnerable. Probably not. But afterwards, you're like, I think I was just giving them what they wanted to hear. I wasn't. A real vulnerable should feel real yucky.
Raw, yeah.
It's like, wow.
Well,
I don't
think
want to say
there's
that.
degrees of that.
Well, I think just to get totally step into your space, I
Yeah.
think that's why people have to keep on redoing the 12 steps, because the first time is very surface, and then you got to dig deeper.
Right.
And when you're being real, when it feels like you said yucky and raw, then you really did it right.
That's so fun, interesting,
Right.
because I had back pain about like 5 years ago, really, really bad, debilitating back, and I found Dr. Sarno's method, and one of the things that he talks about is the idea that you should write out those thoughts that you don't want to say to anybody ever, but they're in your mind. Like if anybody saw that notebook,
This is whose method?
Dr. Sarno,
Okay, you just said it quick.
yeah,
Sorry.
and like
I didn't
you
know.
write
I
the
thought that's
thoughts
what you
out,
said.
and it's very vulnerable, and it's things that you don't want anyone to read or think of. Like it's the most embarrassing thoughts that you have, but those are the thoughts that are eating at you, and then give you like they go somewhere. They got to come out somewhere in your back,
Right.
anxiety, all different forms. But
Did it help, by the way?
yes, very much.
Dr. Sarno's awesome.
My back is really good.
I'm a huge fan. But actually, recently I had told someone that he has to like fill his life with quality stuff that he's like working on and, and make a certain amount of things he's got to do. He wasn't a guy in the program, but he's a guy I'm trying to help out. And he said, well, I want to add all these different things. How do I know which ones are like good for me and which ones aren't? And I said, whichever ones are hard. Like, the ones you don't want to jump. If you're jumping out of bed to do it, that's not it. It's got to be something like okay,
Right.
and then that's
Kinda
the
like
one.
gym.
Meaning, say if you're not going ouch, it's not vulnerable.
Right.
It's got to be really ouch. So I have been trying to be much more vulnerable. It's been a process, and I'm telling everybody to do it, and I got to do it a little bit more myself. But
Right. No. To that
I definitely know the right words.
I'm sitting at those meetings and I'm sharing, and it's more vulnerable because you remember it's a little weird dynamic because even though we're all equals, I am a rabbi in the community, even though the people who are showing up, I only know 2 or 3 of them from prior to these meetings.
Really?
So it's interesting that it brought out different.
It just went out. It's like anybody is invited.
We put it in the
Jewish paper?
the Jewish Journal, the Boston Jewish paper did a full write up on it.
Right. They called me.
Right, exactly. They called
That's
you.
awesome.
So it launched from there. It's and what's interesting to that point is that Devorah Shabtai.
Sure.
She's a huge fan. She thinks this is great. She thinks we need to do this everywhere. And in fact, there's a woman in Boca who's so to speak training because that's to me that will be really the epiphany moment, the Bill W moment. If people can learn how to facilitate these kind of meetings where people don't have to wait till they're in deep crisis, share, unload, take the pressure off the system, and we can duplicate this, not wait till you have a kid in recovery or you yourself are in recovery of some sort, and we could start making this pop. Why we can do this in every shul, every this can happen everywhere. And it doesn't cost anything. It costs the heat of the room.
Well, I could tell you that interesting. I have an idea for all these because one other started as well. Another one in Brooklyn started, different name. And my whole thing is I'm not telling anybody how I'm doing it because I want everybody to try different ways. And my dream.
And the best way will win out.
The best way will win. Let the best man win.
You want to do like a study?
No, I want to get together once a year where we have a weekend where we come together and as many people are doing it and discuss it. Like, where are we going? Have our own groups.
Take the best of whatever.
Shift around groups. You go to that group and see how it's done. I just thought it'd be an absolutely fascinating thing because, yeah, AA has done incredible stuff, but there are other things. We have the Torah, so there may be some other things. It's not the Bible,
right.
The big book. It's close, but it's not the Bible.
It's interesting. I use Menachem Pazansky's book as my 12-step guide because I want it to be Jewish 12 steps.
Right.
So I don't like it's a Chabad house and no one there besides us is religious. They're all Jews, but none of them are from. So I don't want to like I said in the article. I said no one's going to ask you to take Shabbos candles or put on tefillin. This is a support group.
The only time.
It's not a Chabad house.
It's
the only time that I will not ask you to put on tefillin. But if we can infuse sneak in just a splash of Yiddishkeit, I'm good with that.
Right.
So. Right.
Okay, well,
I think helping
you can't stop yourself from
helping
being
another
you,
Jew is as important as the tefillin. If you help a Jew in crisis,
yeah,
yeah.
I love it. Okay, so we you guys got to go shopping. I have a couple more questions before you leave. Don't leave me yet.
We're good.
How are we doing? We're not doing so great. Okay, doesn't matter. I'm totally enjoying this. It's
don't you have a limit on the podcast?
We try.
Does it
I could go forever.
Does it cut off at 4 hours? Like what's your limit?
I'm dying to do a 4-hour podcast.
Oh,
I'm dying to do it.
I don't know if do the metrics let you follow at what point people stop listening?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
And it's like
seconds?
13 seconds in. Yeah, I was like, I don't care. I'm doing most of this for myself.
I
So
love that.
it's when do I get to sit down and have an hour or two conversation with anybody that's like
I think it's the longest period of time that we've actually spoken together. Actually, no, we did the podcast together, but this is even longer.
This is great.
By the way, can we circle back to that message? It is so important, that message that you said on that podcast, that there's no such thing as a crisis.
Well, they can check out the link.
Yeah, check out the other podcast. We talk about it in depth.
This is the cliffhanger. You must go find the podcast on Raizel's A Positive Podcast.
Right.
With Sonny, where they talk about there's no such thing as a crisis. It will change your life.
I've actually had people call me and tell me that. And I want to add that that's something that has been really incredible is the ability to be able to hear parents that are, since we're vocal and we're out there, especially in the Chabad world and the Frum world, people will reach out to us privately, anonymously, and they know that they could talk, and we're able to guide them to the people that we were guided to. And, I've sent a lot of people your way, Sonny.
Yeah.
I feel bad for you. I feel bad for Shabtai. So certain people we've just been...
I'm like, sorry.
It's good.
And they're so grateful. And it's just, for me, it's like every time when they call, I could feel it in my body, like that, the pain, the loneliness, the difficulty of how hard it was. And like, I'm able to give this person some direction. If I would have had that, another person similar that I looked up to or was a similar lifestyle as me and was going through that, it would have been such a source of comfort. So doing that, being able to be there for people.
We often will turn to each other when we're dealing with a situation with life, Chabad, kids, what it doesn't matter what it is. Hey, there's no such thing as a crisis. We do that. We say it to each other.
You say it to each other?
Yes.
Regularly. No such thing as a crisis. And because it really puts everything in perspective. Yeah, this is a problem. Well, we have to find the solution to it. It's not a crisis. Everyone's going to be okay tomorrow. We're all going to be
Right. My thing is that if it's a crisis, go Hatzalah.
Right.
Anything
I
but
love
besides for
Or
Hatzalah.
911 if you don't live
but
near
yes,
there.
Or
You
911.
don't have Hatzalah?
Yeah. Okay.
So
or
you
911.
had a few more questions before we wrap up?
Before, she's getting it done.
She should be responsible.
She's like, let's go. No, I just could say the funny thing is that in my staff meetings, I said it before, but I'm going to say it again, is that in the staff meetings, the guys know there's no such thing as a crisis. It's like a big part of it. And if a guy's like, one of my staff is like having to actually deal with a real crisis, like Narcanning people, like not necessarily in the program, but they're part of these like real crisis moments, and they say to themselves, one of the guys was like, what do I call this? It's like, he's overdosing and dying. What do I call this? Sonny says I'm not allowed to call it a crisis. What do I call this? Anyway, but there are crises, but they are if you should be calling the ambulance for those situations. I'm not saying take a chill when you see that. But you should go to your podcast. And your podcast is, let's plug it one more time. And then Positive Podcast.
Yeah.
How they get? What's the Instagram? All that
Positive
stuff.
Coach is my Instagram handle.
Okay.
And my website is positivecoach.com.
So much positivity. I
So
love
much
it.
positive. Yeah. I get that a lot. Like all my friends and family are like, oh, you're not, really? Come on. You're the positive coach.
Are we positive today?
Are we being positive? I'm not allowed to not be positive at this point.
Yeah. That's going to be hard. That is. Okay. I'm going to ask that question. What if you're not feeling positive? You just don't do anything public.
I will say that
just don't do anything public.
I will say that Hashem has blessed me. I am of nature nurture, right? I'm a naturally happy person. I don't need a lot to be happy. I just need a lot of sleep. That's something I do need a lot of. My husband does not. We have kids who don't. So that's always been. So I need sleep. So the days I don't get sleep, I'm not as positive. But overall, I don't find that hard. It's just something that I naturally go to.
Naturally go to.
Yeah.
I naturally go the other way.
I have a hard time believing that. You have such a happy disposition.
That's true, but I'm so sad all the time. I don't know why.
Oh, Sonny.
Stop.
we gotta
switch seats. We gotta get him on the couch now.
Sonny, come on.
I am naturally sad. I work really hard to be positive.
Okay, so that is incredible. See, to me, want to talk about where the power's at? That's powerful, because somebody who was born naturally positive. Dennis Prager talks about happiness. I heard a podcast with him recently, and he was blessed with being naturally happy.
Right.
He has a disposition. So he talks about how happiness is a moral obligation, right? And it's true, but there are some people that are not born with that disposition, and it takes effort and hard work for them. And when you're doing that, and especially if, like, okay, I don't know you very well, obviously. I'm sure your family and every friend know you better.
Nobody knows me.
Nobody knows
no,
you.
Okay. Some people know me.
But if you're able to still give off that disposition, you have a twinkle on your face all the time.
It's true.
No,
Come on.
But I can empathize. I think I'm wired the same. I'm not naturally happy. I'm not naturally positive. I'm naturally nervous, anxious. It's avoda. It's work.
Right.
It's work.
But clearly you're doing something right, unless you're not just vulnerable, but you're straight up fake.
I'm like, I don't want to make myself like I'm always here, but that is my natural state.
Right.
Like, that is where I am. I call myself the cynical optimist. That's just like, that's where I am. For some reason, I've seen it all, and for some reason, I think everybody's going to be all right, and it's going to be fine. I do have that optimism. But for myself, I definitely lead towards the sadder, whatever. I guess it makes me connect more closely to people like that.
It also, you have more empathy.
I think that's probably why you do this podcast, because it gives you such huge chayas.
This is because I can't afford therapy, so I get to tell the world how miserable I am.
Camera, man.
And they just sell a camera and get to go to therapy.
But really, I think that it's a combination. I think that I think that's where it's at. I really feel that people that it doesn't come natural to, and that choose to do the work, tzaddikim. That's the level. That's it.
I'll be a Bainani.
Oh,
no, okay.
Here comes the Tanya.
No, okay, we're not bringing
and
the
that's
Tanya.
the truth.
Okay, so
we're only able to be a Bainani. Most of us are not. We can't be tzaddikim, really. Actually, the Tanya talks about that.
I know.
So we're Bainani.
That was mostly a joke, because Bainani's really the best.
I'll
I'll go for the best.
Okay, last
Who's
question.
gonna sound like, Oh shoot! Last question. I don't have a last question.
don't
Okay,
have
you
a last
ready?
question.
You ready? You
Okay.
ready? You ready? You ready? I want to know. This is one question before the last question. Want to know?
And I want to plug the Haggadah because I want all your thousands of listeners to
plug that
You
Haggadah,
guys
okay.
use it, right? Don't you guys use it?
We do use
See,
Haggadah.
it's important.
Okay, we'll plug that Haggadah in a second. The question: you're doing the podcast, and you've spoken to a lot of people on a lot of different themes and a lot of different topics, a lot of different disciplines. What are like the themes that like stick out to you? Like you keep seeing it over and over and over again. I know this is getting you on the spot, but I'm
Good
curious
question.
of something.
I think you have to remember that I'm choosing the guests
Okay.
and I'm choosing the topics. So there are things that are interesting to me. The most important theme and the ones that get the most listening are the episodes that are talking about, ways to better yourself. Like I would just put it in 2 words: growth mindset. Those that are about, ideas that feel real and possible and attainable, and hearing other people's stories. Also, that's a big draw for people. But I think that the main thing is that idea that you got to keep working on yourself to be a better parent, to be a better spouse, to be a better, teacher or mechanech or whatever it is. I think it's just I think that's maybe you want to add
Hearing that a
something?
lot.
Is there any theme that comes through that's
I'll tell you, the podcast that Raizel's not on are the topics that she wasn't particularly interested in.
right? Nechemia does a few.
Oh, really?
podcasts,
You
too.
do the other ones. Okay.
No, if it's a topic that, unless it's like a SNEAS issue, there's one coming out that,
Right.
for SNEAS purposes.
I got to add Snea's one.
No,
You
it's
got
not
to
on
be
SNEAS.
canceled.
It's not on SNEAS.
No. Well,
I don't think it's SNEAS. Oh, you're saying for SNEAS.
for SNEAS
Yeah, I wouldn't be
purposes.
comfortable to.
It's talking about boys and masturbation and growing into themselves and puberty wise
Right.
and how to deal with it
I
and the
actually would be
guilt
comfortable
and the
to talk
guilt
about
and the
that.
shame
Right.
and all that stuff.
But you're the one that got the topic, and it makes more sense for you to be, the one that's, a male.
I think the interviewer
Right.
wanted it to be.
Yeah. Okay. Probably too.
A male. Okay.
Yeah.
I
It's
will-
that new book, From Boys to Men. I don't know if you heard about it.
No.
It's out there.
I'm waiting for
The-
for the man thing to kick in my life. It's coming.
Yes.
Okay, last question which I ask everybody if you listen to the whole podcast, and it's and you're gonna have to give 2 because if you're on top, stay on top of a building, shouting out to the world your message, like what's the thing that is like you just have an urge to just say to the world?
You go first.
You could go first.
Talk about I do remember that you asked that question.
Not every time, but
should've
almost
prepped
every
my-
time.
I
Shoot.
should have prepped myself.
There's no prep. What is the thing? It doesn't have to be so deep.
I'll tell you.
We'll still love you if it's not deep.
I think for me, it's a line that Dennis Prager says. We talk about this all the time. Is we all have a life that we think we're going to have and think we're going to get, and then I think pretty much it doesn't end up that way for anybody. And your happiness and your ability to have a good life beyond that moment where things don't go the way you anticipate. And it doesn't have to be just this crisis. It can be, my mother died when I was a kid. There's so many other challenges out there. The quicker you can get to a point where you create a new image of what a good life looks like, the sooner you will find some serenity and happiness. Life isn't, talk about going natural. That's like, I feel like an 800-pound weight just landed in the room. Life doesn't go as you expect, and for nobody, it doesn't happen for anybody. And the quicker you can reframe, create a new vision, a new dream, a new way forward, given those circumstances, the sooner you'll find a happier existence.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
That is very deep and beautiful.
All right, now you got to follow that.
It's a similar idea. If I were to scream it from the rooftops, it would be like, don't compare yourself to others. Just compare yourself to yourself yesterday, the person who you were yesterday, to be a better version of yourself. Because we the same idea. If we have an idea of what it should look like, what our children should be like, how they should be, and comparing your kids to other siblings or to other cousins or nephews or friends' kids or your life or your marriage or anything, just try to compare yourself to yourself yesterday and to just be a better version of yourself. Keep working on it.
I'm having an absolute blast, and I know we got to stop, but it's next time we'll book a 5-hour slot, see how that works out. Quickly, just the last thing, because we're going to talk about that Gada, because this comes out before Pesach. Hopefully, we'll.
I don't know how far backed up you are on your podcast.
No, I actually took a little break. I'm stacking them up. So we'll see. Hopefully I'll try, if that good, I could put it out very soon. That would be the move. So, what was the deal with that gada? Tell us quick.
All right, super quickly. Right in the beginning of the situation, our son was in treatment, and it was Pesach, and I was a mess. I was just everything.
I don't think you were a mess. Again, I want everybody.
You saw a picture on the wall that was a trigger of something.
You were crying a lot.
That's what I'm saying. So everything brought me to tears. I'm reading that God. I'm like, every line of that God. I'm like, wow.
Wait, could I just stop? I love that you say he was so strong and he's crying a lot. Together, it's like beautiful. It's
true because
it was both true.
What's that line?
Right.
Real men wear pink, so real men can cry.
Yes,
that's right.
And so you were doing your work. You were doing what you had to do, and you were emotional. There's a lot of emotions around it.
You're gonna have to put on your therapist hat. To analyze all my traumas. That this was finally the door that allowed all the tears of the last 40 years of my life to finally come out. But okay. But the short of it was, I was reading through the Gada, and I said, every line of the Gada spoke to me, and it reminded me of something I'd read in the Big Book, and I said, there's got to be a proper recovery. So I Googled it, and there was a couple 1950s PDFs from some conservative rabbi out in Kentucky or something.
Right.
And so I mentioned to my brother, I said, we were in Atlanta at that time, and he says, talk to Shea Taub. He's the Jewish king of recovery. Sadly, Rabbi Twersky had passed on already.
Right.
So I reached out to Shea. Shea says, not only do I want to do it, he says, I own a domain because that's how much I want to do. He said, I just don't have the time or the ability to do it. I said, okay. I said, I'm going to be your partner. We're going to get this done on time for next year, Pesach. And
if you know Nechemia, when he says that,
he does it.
He does it.
He's like ready to open a pizza shop in Brooklyn.
Exactly.
That's the funniest thing. And so the short of it is, I collaborated very closely with Rabbi Shea Taub. He gave me data. Literally, we had like a WhatsApp that was on fire. He was just firing stuff at me. I said, just give me the material. I will make it a book. And we did, and then had a person typing and a person editing, and the only problem was the pandemic. We printed in China, and it only arrived 3 weeks before Pesach, which killed me.
Right.
We
still got it out there.
We still got it out there.
Yeah.
Is it? You have to get it online? How do you get it?
You can get it on Amazon, but if you want to pay a better price, you can get it at 4cups.org.
4cups.org.
I think the greatest moment was when our son actually was so proud of it and wanted to give it out to his friends and hand it out. That was like a moment.
Yeah, there was something.
I know that we bought for every guy in the house. This is the guy that we use. Right. So the guys really loved it.
Yeah.
They really do. I'm going to do it this year too.
And I know a friend of mine handed out a bunch at the recent TLR event. So listen, at the end of the day, the goal was, my goal was, I said, if we break even and we just brought this
to the world,
that Dayenu, no pun intended.
Is that still your goal?
What do you call it? Vulnerable. So maybe vulnerable. So maybe my idealism, is waning with time.
Right.
Maybe we'll make money on the second edition. But I was so happy to help, really help Rabbi Shea Taub bring it to the world. It was a labor of love, and it was incredible.
Okay. I did not know how much I would enjoy this podcast. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I feel like we could talk about 100 more topics.
Are you still sad?
What?
Oh, he said.
I am always sad. It's called dysthymia.
Don't be sad.
So
dysthymia.
It is a thing.
Yeah.
Whatever. They have a new name for it.
I have to Google that. Is that like seasonal affective disorder?
It's like seasonal, but every season. So it's fine. I'll be fine.
Oh, yeah.
Thank God.
Fine.
I go cry to my wife a little, and she won't come on the podcast, but then she'll talk about all the crying I
I
do.
want to meet her.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
Do you guys ever want to come to Boston for a Shabbos or something? We would love to host you guys. We have a big place.
I can't get my kids to go to my neighbors for a lunch.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
we'll have to.
We have similar kids.
They do not want to go anywhere
anywhere.
ever for anything.
I hear that.
But yeah, I'd love you to meet.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you guys so much for coming.
Our pleasure.
It was awesome.
Hashem should bless you, Sonny,
Yes.
to continue your holy work. You're doing something incredible. You came into our life at a time that you'll have no idea. If you do nothing else in your life, the amount that you've helped us and the peace that you've given us, and I don't even have the right words. Hashem should bless you and pay you back 10,000 times over for the good things that you're doing, the way you're helping people. And I speak to people. I know what you're doing in this world.
Thank you.
So thank you, Hashem should
It's really
bless you.
nice.
I couldn't agree more. You really, we have to work on the sad thing, but you are you are.
See, this is why you can't be vulnerable. No one lets it go.
No,
Just
no.
let me say it.
You are
Move
an
on.
anchor to so many.
people. Yeah.
So many. Us for sure, because we're talking
Yeah.
about us now. But I know so many others, and like Raizel said, Hashem should just reward you, bless you, and we're ignoring the other fellow in the room, but
We don't have to ignore him.
to you and all
Ellie
your
Arendt,
staff,
though.
to
Amazing.
you and all your
Amazing.
staff. You guys are
Incredible.
Ellie. We said it before. Ellie, we love you, man. You're awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for this day that I've been given. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this chance. Thank you for this chance to live anew.